If you're trying to learn watercolor and you're struggling with how wet your paper should be to get it to do different things, today's fun and easy sketchbook exercise is going to help you get a better handle on that. For this one, we're going to do a bit of mixed media. We're going to be using some acrylic, and I have a lid here that has a nice circular shape. We're going to start by taking some of this acrylic paint and putting it down. I'm just putting it on some scrap paper here. Ooh, I've got a paint booger. And then we're going to take our circular shape and we're going to tap it in this. We're just going to make little stamps, and I'm trying to get more or less pretty even pressure and placement, but it doesn't need to be perfect. As I worked across the page, it was going pretty good, and then I dropped it, which is kind of unfortunate. But you know what? Mistakes are natural. Even this piece that it's based on, look at this, there's little tiny imperfections. The pieces of it don't quite meet up. And you know what? I didn't even notice until I really looked for it, and even then, it doesn't make me feel any different about it. Once you get to the other side of the page, I'm going to actually fill in the spaces in between, and I am using an acrylic specific brush here. I don't like to use my watercolor brushes with acrylic paint because I think it ruins them. I'm going to fill everything in. Now this is personal preference, but with acrylic paint, I don't like to make it dry. I actually like to let it dry because I think it smells funny when it's drying, which usually tells me it might not be the best thing to do. Once the acrylic paint has dried, go ahead and spritz your watercolors, and then we're going to mix up a light version of a color. I'm going to start with yellow. I'm going to wet one of the entire circles with this yellow color. Then before going on, I'm going to hold this up to a light source to check the reflection of the light. This is going to help me understand how wet the paper is, because if you see in this door that I'm emulating, the center parts are darker. I do want the color to bleed a little bit, but I want it to more or less stay where I put it. At the beginning, it's going to be really shiny. Not quite yet. We're not going to have any say over where it goes at this point. Because I'm impatient, I'm going to move on to the next one while the other one soaks in a little bit more. I'm going to do a nice light reddish pink color. I'm going to cover the entire thing, and I'm going to observe it again. I'm keeping a close eye on how wet the previous ones are as I move through, and I'm going to do as many as I think I need to do in order to go back to that first one when it's still a little bit shiny, but the shine has really reduced and I can really see the texture of the paper through. At that point, I'm going to grab a much more saturated version of the initial color I used, and I'm going to drop that right in the center. I'm going to observe the ones I've already wet, and if they're ready to go, again, I'm going to take a more saturated version of that color and drop it right in the center. If things start to move around a bit on me, I will wash my brush and then tap it so it's damp, and then I can kind of scoop it up and encourage it to go where I want it to go. And I'm going to work my way across the entire page. I'm not entirely certain about this, but in the image that this is taken from, I'm pretty sure those rings and that dark spot are because this is blown glass. And from what I understand, when they blow the glass, they make a bubble and it's attached at a point, and then they will open the bubble and they spin it so that it makes a big plate and it flings out. And I think the darker spots on all these centers are the very center part of these big plates they spun, and the outside part of the plate that is not the center is actually kind of the more prized part of the glass because it would have been smoother in appearance and made its way into other things like stained glass where they didn't want any ridges. And if my hypothesis is correct, I think it's so neat that they made a really interesting art piece using the least desirable piece of the glass.